live. Okay, welcome. Thanks so much for tuning in. First of all, y'all know I love to like chat about the weather for a bit before we actually get into it. So here's my small weather talk. It is February, which is supposed to be the coldest month in Virginia, and it is like, I think a high of 72 today. So your girl's in a tank top because I'm like sweating and I'm like not gonna turn the air conditioning on. We have our radiator heat off, but I think I'm just gonna go enjoy this weather after today. But we literally like have hardly gotten any snow, and so here I am rocking a tank top in February. Thank you everyone so much for joining. So today I really wanted to talk about wrist braces specifically. So I mean, I could talk for hours about the different ways that you can support your hand through different like types of supports and like different like splints for certain fingers and certain joints and certain like thumbs versus wrists versus low profile, high profile. But I just really want to use this like 15 minutes or so to just chat about wrist braces in particular, because I've gotten like a lot of similar questions about them. And so I'm thinking that this is going to answer like your questions too. But if you happen to like think of a question that you'd like for me to address about wrist splints or braces specifically, feel free to just drop it in the chat. And you can also just say hi. Let me know how you're doing. Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining. So I first wanted to just address like who should use a wrist brace? Like, could you benefit from a wrist brace? How do you know if like this thing could even help you? And I'll just start by talking about some common diagnoses that benefit from wrist braces. Now, when I say wrist brace, what I'm talking about, or a wrist splint, is something that is rigid. So rigid as in like there's a metal bar in there, right? I've got a couple examples. This is metal or plastic. It's hard, but it doesn't bend. Okay, so when you put it on, your wrist can't or shouldn't move, although you're gonna see this one, because there's no strap right here, I can still kind of bend my wrist. Now let's contrast that with this one, which keeps it more supported, if you will. But there is a major price difference in between these, and I think, so this one's way more supported than this one, but I do think this one like has a place and we can chat about it. There's so many different wrist braces on the market, y'all, but I just first want to tell you like why you might benefit from a wrist brace. So some common diagnoses might include tennis elbow or golfer's elbow. And the reason why I start with this first is because one of the questions that I've gotten specifically is like, so I am having a lot of forearm pain, meaning I'm thinking like, okay, like probably in this region, right? Pain in my forearm. So, and most of my upper extremity joints are hypermobile. Would I benefit from a wrist brace? And then my answer is like probably, to some extent, yes, because the muscles that are in our forearm are the muscles that control our wrist motion. So the muscles down here in this group, some of these muscles, when they contract, they can move our wrist forward, okay? And then some of the muscles that are back here, when they extend, or when they contract, they extend our wrist back here, okay? So if you're having pain in your forearm that feels muscular, it feels like maybe you're feeling like your wrist is overworked. You use your hand all day and you're feeling some discomfort and you're like in those muscles, like it's crampy or it's sore, then wearing something that supports your wrist will keep these from firing a lot, which means that it will be, more resting, right? And it sounds like your muscles might just need to rest. And so why I bring that up with tennis elbow and golfer's elbow is because while you're experiencing pain in your elbow, it's actually due to the tendons of the muscles in your forearm. So we all have tendons that attach our muscles to our bones. We have tendons of our muscles in our forearm that attach our muscles to our elbow bone, okay? And with tennis elbow or golfer's elbow, it means that those tendons are getting overworked or even have like micro tears in them, which means those muscles just need to calm down, which is why wrist braces are often like a first line of defense for tennis elbow or golfer's elbow. Also why if you do have pain in your forearm, you could definitely look to, well, first of all, talk with your doctor, right? I'm not a doctor. I'm not offering any individualized medical advice, but generally a wrist brace could support you and help you with that pain in your forearm. Carpal tunnel syndrome is also like a huge like diagnosis that people go to for wrist supports, because our carpal tunnel, again, I'm going to take this off. I keep taking it off and putting it back on. Our carpal tunnel is located right here. And so you know how I just talked about our anatomy. Our forearm has a lot of muscles, and those tendons, some of them also come up into our hand. Our carpal tunnel actually is the size of a pea, but 9 tendons from our muscles down here have to pass through it to get to our fingers. And so oftentimes with carpal tunnel syndrome, if there's inflammation surrounding your carpal tunnel or within your wrist, it puts pressure on those 9 tendons and a nerve that also has to run through that. So there's 9 tendons as well as a nerve, your median nerve, that runs in that carpal tunnel. And then those tendons, when things get tight and crampy in there because of like increased fluid, increased inflammation, it puts those tendons bump up against your nerve, and that puts pressure on your nerve, which then causes that numbness and tingling in your hand. So that's why wrist braces are amazing, because when we're using and bending our wrist a lot with carpal tunnel syndrome, that's just creating more friction in that carpal tunnel, putting more pressure on that nerve. And so what it really needs is to just calm down. So again, that's when a wrist brace could come in and just hold that wrist in a neutral spot to just help everything calm down. Some other common diagnoses might include arthritis, like if you have osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis in particular, often you'll have like arthritis localized within this wrist and not including like your thumb joint down here. With osteoarthritis, it's really common to have like arthritis in this joint, which means that a wrist brace alone probably would not be enough. Like you probably would need to think about involving that thumb. But some people do have osteoarthritis in just their wrist, or rheumatoid arthritis or psoriatic arthritis of some sorts in their wrist. So I would say if you have arthritis that's just in your wrist and not including your thumb, a wrist brace could definitely help as well. And then I also think about hypermobility. So I have hypermobility. Sometimes I opt for a wrist brace over like something that includes my thumb if I need to. And I have hypermobility in both my wrist and my thumb. So like this is abnormally hypermobile, right? And so sometimes I opt for, but my thumb is too, but sometimes I opt for a wrist brace rather than a thumb support. If I really need my thumb motion, but I don't, like locking down my thumb and my wrist might feel like too much, but just having the wrist alone is nice and supportive and offers some good support. So those are sort of like some common diagnoses with like wrist braces. What brace is the best for CRPS, hand with hypermobility? Yeah. So when thinking about picking the brace, like if there's a certain brace, there's so many braces out there, y'all. Like I have only tried just a few. Like these are my 2 strictly wrist braces. And what I will say is, so this is a Push brand. Brace Lab gifted me this or gave me this. I wanted it as a sample for my mobile clinic, and they give samples to therapists, so they just gave this to me. A cool feature about this one is that it has like a rigid part back here as well as down here. And then I can kind of control, like stretch it for more tension or for more support, or not do so much if I want less support, but I can kind of customize my level of support there. And even though it's pretty short compared to other braces that might do the same thing, it still offers some good restriction because of that top piece. It's a higher price point. This one is a pretty low price point, and I think one of the major things about it that I don't like is the fact that there's no strap here, which means I can, if I try, I can still move my wrist. Now, it's not going into that full hyperextension, hyperflexion without it, right? I mean, I'm not going down here in it, but I can still move it some. But for me, I mean, I got this because I kind of gave myself tennis elbow at the gym a few weeks ago, and I just felt like I needed to rest my wrist. And for me, it kind of does the job. It supports it when I need it to. If I wanted to keep it completely still though, I would just want a strap up here. So look at some of the strap placement, look at like the Velcro when you're look at the reviews on Amazon. I did read a review that said, oh, like this, I can still wiggle my hand in it. So just kind of look at like the reviews that other people are talking about with the braces when you're looking, when you're trying to pick a brace that's right for you. This is the Free 2 brand. The reason why I went with this one is because there were a lot of reviews that said the thumb hole was comfortable. Commonly with wrist supports or wrist braces, the thumb hole is where like the discomfort comes in. And both of these have pretty, I would say, good thumb holes. But sometimes wrist braces will have like a thumb hole that's too small maybe and feel a little constrictive, or like when you're like moving your hand and using your fingers like inevitably, right, as we all do. Sometimes like that thumb hole can get uncomfortable in certain braces. So just check out the reviews and look at what people are saying. Again, this is the push brace. It really does a great job of restricting my motion. This is the Free 2. Not so good of a job, but like, you know, like way cheaper. And I also, what I like about the Free 2 as well, I mean, this one's super comfortable too. This one's cool because it also is like kind of like a silky texture on the inside, which again, like comfort can just be really key. So that's sort of what I wanted to talk about when it comes to like, do you need a wrist brace? And then how to like, what features to look for in a brace. Another question I've gotten a lot is like the long-term use of braces. Okay, so like, does using a rigid splint, like, well, one of the questions I got was, does using a rigid splint in the night, such as with carpal tunnel syndrome, cause weakness long-term? No. So I would say at nighttime, it's absolutely, like, you can't overuse a wrist splint, because when we're thinking about how, like, we use our hands, the only issue that I see with wrist splints is if you're using it all day, every single day. If you're using it when your muscles would normally be contracting and your joint would normally be moving and you'd normally be using your hand and your wrist in a normal way, that wrist brace is there, that's when you could get into like trouble with weakness. But when you're just sleeping, and at nighttime we don't usually use our hands unless you're doing some serious sleepwalking or something, then it's absolutely okay to sleep in a brace like as much as you need to. When does it become harmful to use was another question I got, and how often / when to use them. I've heard that not all the time, otherwise you become weaker. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to like kind of get into as well. So like all of those are certainly valid points. And yes, if you were to like wear a wrist brace 100% of the time, like forever, right? Not just for a few weeks, not just relying on it as a pain tool and then kind of discontinuing it till you need it again. But like if you were to forever use it, yeah, it would weaken your forearm muscles, right? Because you're not really able to use them or contract them. Your joint would stiffen up because you're not moving it. Motion is lotion. And you would become like reliant on your wrist brace for activities that you probably didn't need them for in the first place. But then you start to need them because you start to use, if you're wearing this 100% of the time all day long, then you start to use it for every activity, and then your wrist sort of relies on it. So if you're dealing with something like tennis elbow or golfer's elbow, or even like carpal tunnel syndrome, I would say there's a time and a place to wear it all the time for like a brief period of time, like we're talking weeks, and then you sort of wean off of it. Especially also if you have like a fracture or something like that, like follow your doctor's instructions. So I'm not saying to completely ditch your wrist splint, especially when it's using to heal tissue or heal muscles or heal like a tendon that's torn or heal a fracture. Definitely use it as instructed for those things. But when I think about like weakness becoming an issue with long-term use of wrist braces, I'm thinking like my people with a chronic condition such as arthritis or hypermobility. And so that's when we sort of want to avoid like the 100% of the wear time deal with our wrist braces. So my advice would be to just start to like, with like a gentle curiosity, right? Because when you start to like think about your pain, it can get to be like a little bit overwhelming. And so I would say only do this if you're in a space where like you feel like there's room for this, but just start to recognize like patterns of your pain, like with again, a gentle curiosity, like, and try to like observe it with like a neutral mindset, right? Like, okay, when I just like lifted up that pan, it made my wrist hurt. Okay, noted. And then I'm gonna keep going on. Just start to notice when your pain comes up. During which activities, and also like according to maybe the time of day, or like your sort of like your pain pattern that you've had over the past week or so. I teach my students in Healthy Hands Academy and in Hypermobile Hands Blueprint how to develop their own Flair toolbox. And so I can teach you a little bit about this today too. You can try to start assigning like a zone for your symptoms. So for example, your green zone, green means go, so green zone might be like everything's fine and dandy and your hands feel good. Yellow zone is like kind of like slow down, like start to like actually pay attention and maybe put something on for prevention. Maybe you're noticing over the past several days that your pain is like starting to come up and you're having more bad days than good. And then you kind of know that that yellow zone is an indicator that your red zone, right? Alarm signals go in. Red zone means like full-blown pain flare. We're there. There's not really any preventing it anymore because we've already arrived at our pain. We really want to target, like if you are having wrist pain, I would really want you to try to think about targeting your yellow zone. So for example, you might wake up and notice, okay, my wrist is feeling uncomfortable, or you might do something like gardening and you didn't wear a support. Okay, my wrist is really starting to feel it. In the past several days, it feels like I'm about to enter a pain flare. That would be when I would recommend, that's when I put on my support. So that would be assigned to you. And again, this can take a lot of time and practice to sort of observe your pain patterns, think about the activities that you might need it for, and that might be a sign, okay, I'm gonna rely a little bit like more heavily on this until I start to notice myself coming out of that pain flare. And also, so you're gonna look at, when you're determining whether or not to wear your brace, you're gonna look at like that zone, right, your pain patterns. And you're also gonna look at like which activities you might need the most support with. So there might be an activity where every single time you do it, you just put the dang thing on, no matter what zone you're in. If you're in your green zone or your red zone, it doesn't matter. You're gonna put your brace on because you know that if you don't, it's gonna make your hand feel like crap. For me, that is definitely clipping my husband's hair. So this is a left brace. This is the right one that I have recently purchased because I was having like some tennis elbow things at the gym. But I am wearing this every single time I trim my husband's hair now, because when I haven't in the past, like the vibrations just absolutely kill my forearm and my wrist. And so no matter what zone I'm in, I'll just put it on. Maybe for you, it's like playing tennis. Maybe when, maybe you have arthritis in your wrist and you're swinging the racket, and every time that tennis ball hits the racket, it sends like a shooting pain into your wrist. Just maybe no matter what zone you're in, you put the wrist brace on for tennis. Maybe you keep your wrist brace in your car because you have noticed that every time you start to carry groceries in from your car, right, and inside, your wrist is on fire. And so carrying heavy groceries can be a trigger, so you just keep it in your car and do that every time, even if you're in the green zone. And then if you're in your green zone, you just take it off after the activity, right? I want you to target your own specific needs according to your pain zone and your activity, rather than relying on just 100% of the time I'm gonna wear this so that I never experience pain again. Because when you keep it on 100% of the time for the rest of your life, and I don't know that anyone ever actually does that anyway, but when you wear it more than you mean to or realize it, that is when you might have some more weakness in your forearm, or you might start to rely more heavily on that wrist brace than you would have if you weren't wearing it all the time. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if this is resonating with you. Another key also when you're talking about wrist pain that you've had for a good amount of time is to just know your other options for supporting your wrist. So yes, you can use this for certain activities or based off of your pain zone. But you might also have other things in your Flair toolkit or your Flair toolbox, such as using a wrist compression sleeve or applying kinesio tape to your wrist in a certain way that feels supportive and good, but still allows you the motion that you need. Or maybe you find a good wrist wrap, like something that's super low profile but just wraps around your wrist. There's like tons of low profile wrist options. You don't have to just be limited to the dang rigid metal bar brace for meeting all of your like wrist support needs. The last thing I wanted to talk about before I wrap up is the use of wrist braces with adaptive equipment. So I've gotten a couple questions about that. Like if I have wrist pain, but I have to use a cane, should I use wrist supports or splints? Yeah, I definitely think so. The amount of pressure that you have to put on your cane when you walk, like through your wrist, that can be pretty substantial. And if you're experiencing pain with it, that might be one of your activities that you're just like, you know what, no matter what, I'm just gonna wear my wrist support, my wrist brace, or whatever it is, every single time. You put it near your cane, and you just always have it with you, and then you take it off when you're not using your cane. Another question I got was thumb supports for forearm crutches. Metagrips are weird on the handles. So I'm thinking this would be one of those, like the forearm crutches, right, that wrap around here that you would like grip with your handles, and the Metagrip is like a low profile thumb support like down here that is very rigid, and I could see how like the pressure of your crutch or your adaptive equipment could be like, you know, uncomfortable with that rigid thing that kind of starts and stops like right here. So a good recommendation that I have, and again, this might be for you or this might not, but I did want to show you this one. This is called the Comfort Cool Splint. So what's cool about it, besides the fact that it is cool, right, is that it's flexible. It's really rigid. It's not rigid. It's very flexible. It's very soft. And it supports your thumb and your wrist. And there's a lot of Velcro involved, so bear with me. This is also not the right size for me, but this is just what I had from my clinic. So I'm just going to show you, even though it's the wrong size. So you can kind of control like how much tension you put on it with these Velcro straps. So the tighter that you pull those, the more support you're going to get. This is, again, too large for me, so it's going to show a lot more flexibility, but I mean, even with one that's well-fitting, you're still going to have some good flexibility and mobility, and this could be beneficial for using like a wheelchair or a cane or a forearm crutch or a walker, because you still have that mobility to grip, right? Like it's not restricting your thumb in any way, and it's soft and comfortable, so that the weight that you're putting through your hand onto your assistive device is not like cutting your circulation off with your rigid push Metagrip, for example. One consideration with this too is like you have to know like what your piece of adaptive equipment, the handles are like, and you have to like think about yourself using this, because this material is softer. Because it's so comfortable, it is softer, and you would want to make sure that the material of your brace is not going to like slip right off of your forearm crutch or your cane or whatever it is that you're using. And so this one doesn't have any like textured pieces to it. So if you can see yourself like slipping, or if there's like any fall risk, right? Like if you see yourself like, if you have something soft on, you're like, I don't want to like risk it, or that sounds like I might actually just like, my hand might slip right off. Look for something that's a little bit more textured. But I do love this for like the flexibility that it provides, and the fact that it is so soft, like not so rigid, and more bendable and more comfortable to bear weight through. So that was it for what I had planned. Let's see these comments. Yep, have stiff thumbs after pregnancy. What do orthopedics do for that? Is it common trigger thumb? Trigger thumb is common after pregnancy, and trigger thumb is like sort of when your thumb locks down, and then you have, like if you're using your hand and you notice that your thumb locks down and you have to like pry it back up, that would be a sign of trigger thumb. Definitely talk with your doctor about that. I'm going to see if we have any more questions about wrist braces or the use of wrist supports, and it doesn't look like we do. So as always, thanks for tuning in. I hope that you have a lovely Thursday and a great weekend coming up. Bye, guys.